How's everything?
Good. How about you?
A little hectic today.
Yeah.
A little hectic.
Actually gonna try going to YouTube.
I'm having an argument with him about Santa Claus is a myth. I said, no way. And we're fighting about that.
Okay.
He's pretty thoroughly an unbeliever.
Oh, and Santa Claus?
Yeah. I think it's because of his mom and dad, I'm pretty sure.
What'd you guys go to Lowe's for?
I'm sorry?
What'd you guys go to Lowe's for?
Let me turn on these hearing equipment, which I haven't done. I don't know why, but there we go. Now even I can hear myself.
I was saying, why'd you go to Lowe's?
What?
Why'd you go to Lowe's?
Oh yeah?
Why'd you go to Lowe's?
Oh, why? We're gonna probably do a 12 by 14 deck in Watauga, way up 15 miles from here. And well, the guy said he's gonna let me know. I hope he does. It's a long ways away and it's a lot of work, but I asked for a lot of money on purpose because I don't know the guy. And if I'm going to drive that far,
Jeez. Oh, I think I know. Okay. Did you have a specific topic? If not,
I was hoping you were thinking of something because I was thinking of something that was following me all week.
Okay. Well, I've got something.
Good.
I was thinking, I think I got a name for the podcast.
I'm sorry?
I said, I think I've got a name for the podcast. And
Okay.
I figured we'd actually chat about the name, which is really about the podcast. Like, I think this could be a good,
Okay.
like...
You getting any decent comments?
Not beyond our normal crowd.
Yeah. Well, we'll mix it up today a little bit.
Well, definitely, I think streaming to YouTube and starting to put them out there, I think is going to be useful.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you know a Caleb at church that's sick? No? My wife talked about it and I don't even know who she's talking about.
Let's check all this stuff. Go ahead and hit the record button. Okay, there's that. And then I should be good. Oh, I don't want to do that yet. This actually. All right, we're technically streaming now.
Man, you all dressed up. I would have dressed up.
I dress up every time. I'm not gonna.
I don't dress up very often. I'll tell you that right now. It's not one of my gigs.
All right, let's kick this off.
Okay.
All right, well, we're live again. I'm Mike Cornwell. This is John Trimble, and this is our leadership podcast. And one of the things I want to talk about today was I think I've got a name for the podcast. But before I say what the name of the podcast is,
Oh, so he's going to spring it on me.
I am going to
live, and I'm supposed to react possible, and there's no way I can go against it because he's got me on film. I know how it works. I get it. I get it.
Before I say the
I get it. I can think on my feet.
So the real question is why are we doing this podcast? There's obviously a reason why we're doing this podcast. Like why do you feel compelled to do this podcast in this particular podcast? We're not talking about cars. We're not talking about, I don't know. We're not really talking about church. We're not really talking about those things. We're talking about like leadership. But why are we talking about leadership?
Yeah, because I said everything rises and falls on leadership.
Okay.
The town, the church,
Okay.
your home. Bad leaders, not good. Things don't really function well.
Yeah.
And when it says in the Old Testament that every man did that which is right in his own eyes, and everybody went crazy and did weird, bad stuff, it was because there was no leader. And so
I kind of asked the question, like, going a little bit further with it. Okay. Those are facts, but the bigger there's like a bigger reason of why that's true. So are you saying that there's missing leadership?
Leadership is missing sorely, badly in church, in homes, in the country.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
So would you say
we're in a day when people do that which is right in their own eyes. And that's not leadership. Leadership gets lost when everybody does whatever they want to.
Yeah.
You know, and it takes a leader to bring them around to not be that way.
Okay.
Although it takes a strong leader to do that.
Yeah. Well, it takes somebody who has skills. Who's generally not just winging it.
Right. And someone that will show up. You know, there's a lot of people scared to death. Even when God called Gideon, he was a chicken, and he did his sacrifices inside where nobody could see him, and he was hiding, and God called him a great man of valor. And he's going like, I'm not a great man of valor. I'm doing this. I'm hiding from these people. They're going to kill me if they catch me doing this. But those are the people that he turns into leaders, which says a lot about the God factor in this whole thing, which is what I was thinking about, the God factor.
Well, so my first crack at a name for the podcast was the leadership vacuum.
Vacuum.
Yeah, the leadership vacuum. And
wow, how true that is.
I think to some degree you think that what's needed, or you're trying to impart some practical things, some like very specific things for people to take away, and even if it's just by osmosis, they start applying those things, and all of a sudden maybe the leadership kind of raises, or that vacuum starts to fill a little bit. And I just kind of hit me when I was thinking about it, like, well, the reason why I would be doing this podcast would be the same thing, because for sure I definitively, and I feel like for me, I just kind of stumbled into understanding this, because once I started kind of breaking it down and seeing it, all of a sudden I realized, oh wow, people really are not trained in this, and they don't. They're really winging it. Like there is a sort of a science and an art to getting people to do things, and definitely. People are they're kind of stumbling in the dark when, to be honest, it's not that hard.
I agree. And so when there is a leader that shows up and takes the lead, there has to be there's a point where people begin to say, hey, wait a minute, this guy is saying, and you either accept it or reject it, of course, but that doesn't make you a leader or not a leader. Either you are a leader or you're not, and if you take the lead, some will recognize it, some will not. Just the same with Moses and Korah, the same with everybody else. However, the vacuum is that there are people that are not willing to stand up and show up and do it. And that's a hard thing, because I think what happens is we think, well, if we got to have leaders, we got to just do this or have a committee to do that, and that's what we fall back on, committee, and let's discuss it. But there's no leader. It's a hard thing.
I'll definitely say, I mean, I see this stuff where people very regularly, they will do let's go see what X person thinks. Why? And it's not necessarily because that person is the leader or something like that. It's just another person that they might be getting bolstered or feeling more confident that if they agree with what they maybe sort of believe, then maybe that means something a little bit more than them taking the initiative, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll go out to, that person to try to get it. And then you go it's like almost every time you go and you talk to them, and then it turns into, well, I don't know. And then it's a wishy-washy amongst like 3-4 people. And that's not a recipe for any kind of success.
I agree. And if a guy shows up and takes the lead, he's got to have results. Because when the results isn't there, the people don't care. Well, that's his opinion. Well, he's standing up. But, so there's gonna need to be results. And I think that's probably more important than anything is to have results.
Well, I mean, to me, I kind of consider that's like the whole point of leadership to begin with.
Whole point of leadership.
It's the end. Going towards that direction. Now, may or may not achieve that. That's just reality. But even just the act of moving, because a lot of people don't realize that the staying stationary is one of the worst parts that you could possibly do. Because that's where people start. I mean, just even from like a basic standpoint, people, if you're not moving in a direction, you don't really have that momentum, and little people will go that way, so people kind of go that way, and it really starts to turning into herding of cats.
Amen. I agree. I think we need to hear the hard part. Here's the hard part, as far as I'm concerned. What I've had to learn, because I tell this story about how I felt like the Lord handed me a football, like a ball.
Yeah.
And I took off running with it. And I took off running with it for years. And he let me run hither and yon. Several churches, started one, started another, got involved with this one. And I was going like crazy. And finally, I just spent myself. I came back and Jesus said to me, I just wanted you to hold the ball. And I went, what? I thought you wanted me to run with it. That's why you gave me the ball. So I ran with it. And so I had to realize something. Here's the key that I think is very important. A leader, true leader, is dying to himself. He's not just doing whatever he feels like doing. He's not just doing whatever he thinks ought to be a good idea. He's got to die to himself. He's got to say, that's my idea. What is God's idea? I mean, Moses didn't want to go to the desert. He didn't want to kill that Egyptian. He didn't want to go through all that he went through. He didn't want any of that. He didn't want any. In fact, he grew up in the royalty. He grew up, had a...
So it's funny. I mean, he left and was not going back. I mean, just that simple. And even then, I do, again, I love the Moses analogy because there's so much reality there. Even when he was told to go, I think he denied, 3 times.
Yeah. And suddenly God said, okay, I'm burning a bush. I'm not going to consume it. Let's see what you do with that. And it says, Moses said, I'm going to turn aside, which in the Hebrew is, I'm not going this way, I'm going to go this way, which is not the way I normally go, but I'm going to turn from the way I normally go and find out what this is all about. And that's what hit Moses. There, God said, okay, you're going to turn aside to see this? Take your shoes off, you're on holy ground. From here on out, you're mine. And that's how I see it even in my life. When I began to say, okay, Lord, I think he said, okay, now you're mine. Now you're in trouble. Now you got some stuff to go through, but we're going to go together. So it takes a serious decision. So
I feel like we should kind of identify a little bit, why does this vacuum exist? We are definitely not the first persons to talk about leadership by any stretch of the imagination.
I'm sure not.
I mean, I've got 15 leadership books up there, and that's a nano of the books out there.
And I've read so many, and they helped me to some degree, but they never pinned it down until I was willing to stand and hold the ball and go when I was told to go.
Yeah.
That was hard. That was real hard. And I thought, well, he says to hold the ball, so I'm holding the ball. And then he goes, pass it. I'm like, what? No, 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 no. You, me, and the ball, man. You, me, and the ball, Jesus. Not pass it. Someone else gets to run with it and have fun with it. No, no, no. He said, yeah, I want you to keep passing the ball. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. I'm out. but excuse me. The results came in obedience. And I think that's why there's a vacuum. People do not want to do what it takes to be a leader. And I mean, whoever's watching this can tell you so many times some leaders that have been not really leaders, but just all kinds of different people stepping up to do things.
Yeah.
But they're not really a leader. They're not really someone who paid the price. That's how I see it.
I mean, I think
practically.
I think my walks I see, and this is I'll keep saying that as like my own personal bias because it's pretty clear I am very biased in this realm. But I see I feel like I'm surrounded by managers and like people who are trying to manage, and it drives me crazy. And there's something about it, and I think it's my maybe entrepreneurial. Independent mind that I
Spirit.
I look what they're doing, and I definitively am not interested. I can see what they're doing, like I think they kind of see, and there's all this kind of chaos going on, and it kind of surrounds them, but I can kind of pull back and look at it, and it's not all around me. It's right there, and I watch them, and it's like you're literally making decisions that are going to screw everybody over because you're trying to get things that don't matter. And so oftentimes I find that the typical manager is a people person. And one of the things that I've seen is there's really two types of people. And there's either like thing-oriented people, and then there's people-oriented people. And everybody's needed. They have their different roles. They have different purposes. But the manager type that is like a people person, oftentimes their goal, their end, is just for some entity to maintain that somebody likes them or some group of people likes them. But that in almost every situation I've seen, never is that like winning. That's what it is. It's just like, oh, we've got, there's some problem that there's trying to be solved, and their solution is, well, we've got a good relationship with these people, so we should try to maintain that relationship. But it's like getting that relationship or holding that relationship is not success. In fact, we're foregoing success so we can have that relationship. And that's not part of like some grand strategy. It's just part of their innate behavior, that the way they go about solving problems. I've seen it many times, and for me, that's like a perfect example of, and in that case, oftentimes that person I would say is a more of an other type, but they're definitely doing some very selfish stuff, and they have no idea that they're doing it.
And I think they're managing, as you said, manager, a certain idea that everyone's accepted around them, whether it's a people person or a manager. Yeah. And I like the story of Moses because the vision was to get to the promised land, which he never made.
Yeah, that's right.
The promised land was the vision. And I think he did 40 years where the whole generation died off, saying, you guys don't have the vision, but not Joshua. He hung in there for that.
Yeah.
And then he was used to take them into the promised land and do great wonders and exploits. And so I hate to do a teaching on the vision, but I could do that real quickly to say the simple verse that says, without a progressive vision, they dwell carelessly. But that doesn't mean they dwell like they don't care. It means they dwell because they just hang because they don't want to restrain themselves. And if that word means they don't restrain themselves, then it must be that they are not in the vision. You gotta get a hold of the destination dream or whatever you want to call it, vision, and say, I want to be a part of that vision. And if that takes him being the leader and working with that, that's what I'm going to do. And I think that's crucial for a leader. Crucial because there are a lot of leaders that have fallen by the wayside. Their eyes became dim like Eli. And finally, when Samuel come around, whose words never fell to the ground, who became a great leader, prophet, he had to go to Eli, the older guy, and find out what to do about this thing that God was calling him. He said, stay there and wait and talk to him.
Stay there and wait and hear what God's saying to do. And once he did, he became a great man. So leadership and vision are strongly tied together. And I think one of the reasons why it also says in the Old Testament there was no vision, there was no word of God at that time. Everybody did right in their own eyes because no one saw anything to do. No one saw anything to go. Where are we going? And I can't tell you how many times I've been in churches where I ask them, where are you going? And they can't tell you. They can't tell you. I go, what do you mean, where are we going? We're being a church. We're being a New Testament church. No, that's not where you're going. That's maybe who you are, but it's not where you're going. Where are you going?
Yeah, this is a pet peeve of mine. I mean, I have said about, like, the leaders out there, right? The supposed leaders out there. Where are we going? What ride are we on? I mean, I think about,
what ride are we on?
I mean, I try, trying to pull all of my, like, personal politics, like, to the side. I'm pretty good at suspending this to, like, kind of have, like, a good critical argument. I think about, like, the current president. Where are we going? I have no idea. You're supposed to be, like, supposedly, like, a leader. I'm not going to say you're the leader of the United States. I think that's really stupid that people say that, personally. But because they don't. If 50% of the country doesn't like them, they can't possibly be leading them. So that's just not true. But assuming that's semi-true for a moment, where are we going? And there's never, ever has there been anything from the very beginning of this person's presidency that would indicate we are going anywhere.
Which is no vision.
It is no vision.
And without a progressive vision, the people say, I don't care.
Like, an example would be, I was seeing something about, like, going to the moon. Well, the reason why we don't go to the moon is because there's no freaking vision to go to the moon. It's not like I can see it's the same mentality of like a manager, where what they do is they've got, like, you know what a Gantt chart is?
Yeah.
It's, they got all their lines of efforts that they're doing, and they're trying to piece them together, and just on that line is going to the moon. Bro, that doesn't work. It doesn't work.
No.
I think about, like, Elon Musk and this kind of stuff, where this is probably my biggest critique of Elon Musk. For one, he doesn't talk about going to Mars anymore, and that was a vision. That was, like, galvanizing people, and he basically started SpaceX from that. But he doesn't really talk about that. He now talks about a bunch of other stuff. Well, that vision is so difficult to achieve that it requires somebody to totally focus on it. Yeah. We are never going to Mars. Yeah. I'm not saying that we should. I'm not saying I was on that bandwagon, but it will never happen because there is not a person who is 100% focused on beating the drum and getting the resources to start flowing and aligning themselves. It's just now just another business.
So one of the reasons for the vacuum then is no vision. And one of the other reasons is that leaders, if they have a vision, they don't know how to impart it.
Yeah.
In other words, you may have cars to sell, but if you can't sell a car, you're not a salesman.
Yeah.
So you've got to, people have to buy into this vision, buy into what you're pushing, or forget it. And so it isn't just, hey, I'm going this way, everybody come with me, but it's also selling the vision, the product. Now, I don't like that word because,
You're talking about selling?
Yeah, the selling part of it. I'm not saying we're selling it for money.
Yeah.
But we're getting into, someone's going to buy into what you going, where you go.
Well, it's funny. I mean, I would say I feel that when I look at sales and its kind of most basic form, pulling away all of any kind of baggage associated, it is just influence. It is actual leadership. Somebody who would be doing, like, proper sales is actually leading a person. They're finding out whether or not are you on this path? Okay, you are on this path. Are you at this part of the path or are you that part of the path? And so they'll call it sales, like a salesperson or a business person will call it sales. I'm like, no, that's just leadership. It's just
It is.
And the problem, I would argue, by calling it sales is you've actually stripped out all the stuff that actually makes that thing work. And it makes the person actually less effective.
Yeah, I think so. Imparting, Moses, the whole big thing was promised land. We're caught, we're slaves, we're bound. And God raises up a man. And they said one day a deliverer will come up 430 some years later. But they said someday a deliverer will come up, and then they recognized it was Moses. And that took a God thing. That was a God thing. And I don't want to get into all that. But the whole push was to get to the promised land.
Yeah.
That was the vision. And no one had any question whether, does Moses want to go to the promised land?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he made a boo-boo. He made a mistake and broke the tablets, and God said, okay, you're not going in. But he got him there.
It is a good point. He didn't have an alternative vision where now
No.
he's busy doing this other thing over here.
No. He's not this. He died to himself. I hate to say this over and over because nobody likes this. Nobody preaches about that. Nobody says, isn't it fun to die to yourself? Everybody goes,
Well,
no.
What do you mean by that? I mean, I think I know what you mean, but what do you mean?
Yeah. In other words, you can't just have your own agenda and expect people to get on your bandwagon.
Yeah. No, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. I mean, you can have one if you want to. Go ahead. But you're not going to be a leader of any worth. You're just going to be another person with a bunch of opinions on what those are your agendas. But that's not quite vision what I'm talking about. Because vision requires something of you. And Moses wanted to quit so many times. And then when God said, okay, that's it, I'll wipe them out, start a new. He said, whoa, God, no. We don't want that to happen because the enemy will say, you couldn't bring your people over. The enemy will say, you gave up. We can't have that. And God was pleased with that and said, okay, we'll take another path. We'll work on that. And they went on. I love that story about Moses standing in the gap for the people because he had a vision. He goes, whoa, you can't quit on us. We got to get there. And you got to help us. You're our God.
It is kind of weird. Why do you think one of the big things I do pull away from like the mid to later part of the story of Moses is how much God wants to destroy the people, and then Moses is always like praying for them and like begging for them. And I never really understood why. Why does he care?
Why, Moses?
Yeah. They didn't like him in the first place. They were annoying the hell out of him the whole time.
In fact, they didn't think he was worthy to be that leader.
Yeah.
And that's what Dathan's big beef was. Who are you? Why you?
Yeah.
And then Korah and some of the mothers got up and said, why Moses? Why can't we be it? And the difference is that he turned aside and saw the burning bush. And I was talking about this yesterday with Ginny. Some people have a revelation. Some things can be taught, but other things have to be caught.
Yeah.
And if you don't catch it,
well,
you're not gonna dig in.
I mean, this is again back to this leadership vacuum realization. That's what happened to me. I don't know exactly what, but when I was just writing out my book, I eventually come to the realization. I was like, at each step where I was trying to like deconstruct how this thing is actually working, I was like, well, I'm doing this really poorly. I've led people down some really dumb paths that where to some extent they some basic charisma was rubbing off leadership, we'll say vibes to people, and so that's why they were following me along. But it was more self-centered. I'm going here, I'm having a great time going here, and other people pulling from that because it's like, well, I'm not going anywhere. So there's some value to that, but not understanding. So what happens when that's going on with a person who's in that situation where people are starting to follow them when they're going into doing like their own thing, they don't actually see that group as following them. They actually see the group as also doing their own thing or something, but it's actually not what's happening. They're actually seeing that person and they're following them. So what ends up happening is you don't do the right things. You won't, for example, you're talking about like passing on like the baton of leadership. That's never going to happen. What baton? There's no leadership. What baton am I possibly passing on? And I had seen that those were struggles that were going on. It's like, well, no wonder I was having problems in this, that, or the other, because I didn't know what I was doing. It was unconscious. And so the original title for my book was Conscious Leadership, and it was about like coming into the realization. And until the Whole Foods CEO like released his book just before me, and it was called Conscious Leadership. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta go change the name of the book. But his is his is like kind of like woke leadership of some sense.
Yeah.
You know,
people oriented.
Well, it's like he's Whole Foods, and so it's about like being conscious about the food and being conscious, and there's a little bit of element, but I was thinking more like unconscious and conscious.
Yeah.
Like I'm alive and I'm dead. And so I realized, I'm like, wow, all of a sudden it hit me a wave of responsibility for all these things. And I've heard people say the same sorts of things where they get really frustrated and they'll point the finger. And if you look at it in a certain lens, it makes sense that they'll point the finger. Like somebody doesn't do something that maybe they could or whatever. And so that you point the finger at them, failing to realize like I had a piece in that. And then that's never considered. You start taking responsibility for things way beyond what I had no interaction with that. So why would I possibly be responsible?
Would you say that you were waking up to who you really?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I see vacuum happening because people, another thing is where you're going is also, who are you?
Yeah.
I remember walking up to some guy and asked him, who are you? And he for the life of him, he had no clue. And I said, and as the Lord began to deal with me, I realized that the issue is not a sin issue; it's an identity issue.
Yeah, I don't doubt that.
We have no clue who we are, and so we waste away. I mean, it's like a son saying, "The heck with the family and the heck with everything. I'm going to go do something for myself up in the hills of Canada." Who cares? You just lost your identity.
Oh yeah.
You're no longer who you were, started, or born to, and so you got to know who you are in God, in Christ, of course, because you're lost otherwise. That's why you're unconscious. You're no clue. Mm-hmm. I was like that too, unconscious. In fact, my agenda was big time. I got a ball. He gave it to me. Okay, let's go do this. You know, I was unconsciously conscious that I was off and running, but didn't know where I was going and didn't know who I was. And when I began to see who I am, I also became at rest. I realized I don't have to do this. I have to do what he said to do. I have to do what is the vision. What is the vision? And that's probably why I wanted to be a part of this, is because I feel like if people get a whole catch, not just taught, catch this and say, wait a minute, we need leadership. And we need it now, and I'm willing. If you give me the right if that's the vision where you're going, I'm in. And they restrain themselves. That's all that thing is saying, is they restrain themselves to be a part of the vision. And that's a decision that has to come when the vision is imparted. When the leader stands up and says, we're going to the promised land. You guys going? We're going to. Now, it cost them dearly in a lot of ways. I'm sorry, but the fact is they died off in the wilderness.
Yeah. But
what was left was the generation that died off. The rest of that generation went to the promised land.
You know what's so funny about this? My first reaction to that was, you better choose something worthwhile to lead. and I mention it because there's so many things out there. Ignoring kind of that rabbit hole of going down like the proverbial niche wormhole, although that's relevant too. There's so many things that people are quasi-leading, and the real question is, why? Should you? Is it really worth it? Because there's a lot of super minor things that are being led, really minor things. Even to the point where you can see companies that are big companies that really have no purpose for existence. And they've just been able to convince people that they have a super value and this kind of stuff. And all they're really doing is just kind of spinning large parts of humanity around and around and around. And that's it. And I would say that's kind of like no surprise that kind of the postmodern-y type of viewpoints are starting to spring up, because, well, if we're all going in circles, we're all just spinning around. But the reality is that doesn't have to be the case. The reality is just most people are, I think a lot of people are not grounded in reality at all. I think they spend...
Again, that's identity. They're lost.
I guess that could be true, yeah.
Yeah, they don't know who they are. They got no clue. And if they don't know where you're going and they don't see anything worth of value of it, they're going to say, meh.
Well, on top of they don't know who they are, I'll add, they don't know what's outside of them. And
no clue.
When I was living in Louisiana and I started growing food, like my wife loves to tell this kind of stuff because You've got a wife, you know a wife. They love to find the things and then tell everybody about how stupid you were like 20 years ago, all that kind of stuff. But she would bring up that I wouldn't be able to tell you the difference between like an oak tree and a maple tree.
Yeah.
And that's like absolutely true. Very, very far from that now. But I will encounter people all the time who are like afraid of spiders and stuff like that. And why are you afraid of a spider? They've never really stopped to consider this. And it's not about, oh, let me overcome my fear of spiders. Like, again, this kind of like very narrowed view. They could just go outside and do stuff. And then it's naturally that goes away because you start to intuitively gain an understanding of what is actually here and what is actually happening. Because I can tell you right now, nature is deathly afraid of us, and we are generally not afraid of nature whatsoever. And that is like the actual state of things. No, there is no wild animal out there that is interested in humans, because humans are freaking dangerous, and especially dangerous when they're unconscious.
Right.
They're just going along. It's kind of unbelievable.
In fact, there's a scripture that says, the truly upright and righteous people treat their animals well.
Oh, man, yeah.
And then the next verse is, the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. That's the next verse.
Yeah.
And I go, how those two go together? Well, those that are unconscious and don't care about the animals don't have real mercy.
No.
They think they do, but it's cruel.
Dude, there's people out there who are seriously feeding cats like vegetable diets. Dude, it's a carnivore. It is a carnivore. Like, you're literally torturing an animal.
Yeah.
They think that it's literally a virtue. It's madness. That's just madness. It literally has sharp teeth. It wants food, and they're like starving their animals because they're feeding a vegetarian diet. Dude, it's a cat. It's a cat.
I agree.
It's appalling, and it's in that same boat. And I've come to find that, again, out there, where I've experienced the leadership vacuum, it's a lot of these like human games, and people just get really caught up in the human games about stuff like somebody thought this, or this group over here, and none of that matters. It, like, when you come to the realization that at some point in your life, like, again, back to this kind of like the catching it, when you like really catch it, once you realize that you can impart feelings, thoughts, and beliefs in other people, dude, you're no longer a passive recipient to their behavior. You're now an active participant in shaping the way that they see reality itself. In other words, if you don't do something, you're actually complicit. You've helped.
Either way, you're complicit.
Yes, that's right.
Either way. Absolutely.
And it's undeniable fact, and it's actually not that hard to figure out. I mean, the fact that you can make somebody angry, right? You can make them angry. Now, they may get angry independent necessarily of your behavior, but there's something that you could do about that. So if you allow them to just continue to do that, you're complicit. You're allowing it to happen, which may be okay, may be relevant, but
you're part of it. Yeah.
The idea that everybody is just independent and separate is the death of man.
While we're thinking about this vacuum, I've read a lot of, one of my favorite readings is autobiographies and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Because it's talking about how this person made this move and became a leader or became a well-known something.
Okay.
Rather. And what happened was, once they had that crucial, I call it crucial experience.
Yeah.
And they went toward
epiphany.
And they went toward this vision that they saw.
Yeah.
People began to notice.
Yeah.
And are you noticing today, right now, a leader that's rising up that everybody wants to follow? I'm not. I mean, I see some in small areas, but one day a man rises up and goes, this is what I'm doing, and this is where I'm going. And people go, wow.
Oh, I've seen it with my own eyes. I have absolutely seen it.
I have too. But I'm just saying now, these days, the vacuum is because very few leaders.
Oh, well, it's funny you mentioned this. One of the first person that came to mind, he's not local. I mean, he's many states away. And I had to go to a conference, like his kind of like, he was holding like not a conference, like a workshop or something, and going and seeing him. Yeah, that's a perfect example. I mean,
Yeah.
he's traveling the countryside, he's traveling the world.
Yeah.
And he's giving like a fairly technical talk on landscapes. And that dude is leading. And one of the things I discovered after that, and that was many years ago when I first met him, I came to realize this person, I don't even think realizes that he is a leader, let alone applying.
Probably not.
Because the first thing I noticed is like, why do you not have like way more people working with you? Because he's not like, I don't want to, he's not orienting his machine around to bring in people and put them into place. He could have easily brought me in, spent no time doing it. I'm like, bro, you're going to only achieve this ambitious vision with people. You're not going to do it by yourself. This is never going to happen.
And there again is another thing about leadership. I'm not saying he's not a leader.
Oh no, he for sure is.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. But ultimately, the test is: are some people coming alongside him?
Yes.
To bring that to bring the vision about. Yes, to him. But I'm saying, with leaders in general, are people coming alongside to make this happen as well? Are they a part of it? And a part of it is similar to imparting the vision.
Yeah.
I want to be a part of that. Why do you want to be a part of that? Because he showed me the vision.
Yeah.
And I said this to my wife. I was talking to her. I said, it's one thing to keep hearing the message over and over and over and over again, listening to it over and over and over again, trying to be better. That's one thing. And the other thing is having a revelation go, now I see it, caught. It was taught, now it's caught.
Yeah.
And once it's caught, look out.
Who's an example? I was thinking why you mentioned the autobiography. What's an autobiography that you've read that you like that has this kind of element?
Oh, man. Every time I found a good autobiography, I read it. Autobiography. One of the most impressive to me was George Washington Carver.
Okay.
Peanuts.
Yeah, it makes sense.
He came up with, I think, several hundred ways to use a peanut. But when he first started out, he was enthralled about this peanut and began to do all those things as a scientist as well as a peanut person. And he caught on. And now he's well known. Tremendous autobiography of what this guy did with peanuts. And I used to read that and go, with peanuts? But when you get done, you go, wow, this guy had something, and we need to pay attention. And in some ways, the world did, but in other ways, entrepreneurs did and found a way to make money, and that always can be a problem. But it was a tremendous life. Poor as a church mouse. I mean, but that was not his vision. His vision was, we got to get these peanuts and tell people about how important. I mean, they never even started to take peanuts for peanut oil. No one ever thought of it. Things like that. And he began, roasted pieces, salted pieces, on it goes because of George Washington Carver.
He invented all that?
Hmm?
He invented all that?
All that stuff was as a result of his life.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. He's long gone now.
Yeah. No, I definitely know George Washington Carver.
Well, you read his book, or whoever wrote the autobiography or the biography.
Okay, so bring it back to the point. What happened? What was the thing that he then caught? What was the event or
that he taught?
That he got caught.
He caught the fact that there's a lot more about this peanut than we have been told, and I need to find out what that is.
Oh, I see.
And so nothing deterred him from that. And it got to a point where he became actually the peanut master, And so when you read his book, he was a poor black man in the mid-South, I think, that just had no clue, and nobody gave a rat's about him at all. But when he was done, it was George. I'm surprised that they don't call him Carver Peanuts or something. But where he lived, he's well known, and the book knocked me out. I went, wow. Just on peanuts? Maybe earth rocks or some kind of magnitude thing. No, on a peanut. And so somehow he caught something, and a lot of people caught it with him, and he became, I can't remember how many hundreds of ways to use a peanut, and hundreds of reasons why it's healthy and why it's good and all this stuff. He went to the nth degree on peanuts. So, again, I'm saying he couldn't teach that. And that's an interesting thing about Moses, too. I was reading this guy come on as a commentary and said 30 years of Moses' life, when he got kicked out of Egypt, nobody wrote about it. Nothing was said. We really don't know. He just was in the Midian, and he married that girl, Zipporah, wherever. But all we know is that he wandered for years. And then one day he came upon the bush. So I'm saying this really doesn't matter. I mean, we generally, nobody knows me. I'm in obscurity. So are you, really, when you realize it. I mean, there's 330 million people here. We're in obscurity until we catch. When we catch the vision and go toward the vision, and if others catch it and they restrain themselves for that vision, now we're in trouble. Now we're in leadership. That's how I see it. And it takes a God thing, but it takes a catching of that vision, imparting that vision, and things begin to take place.
You know what's a weird thing in my life? To some extent, I think I've had that effect when it comes to like growing food. I try to fight it a little bit, but it is one of those things where I've seen it multiple times happen where I'll say certain kinds of things, and again, a little unconscious. I'm just kind of like blurting a few things out, and all of a sudden, I will see that it will trigger some stuff in other people, and they will get really excited, and I'll throw out a little bit about like what I've done, and it is just one of those things that I've seen in that space, doing things, and to some extent, I don't think it's in the more colloquial sense of, or maybe technical sense of leadership. I think some people would put me in that category, in that realm, because there's things like, and this wasn't intentional, but this is how it started going. Like, I was in Louisiana and I was trying to grow like apples. I wanted to grow apples. At first, I actually did not want to grow apples. And I was growing like other fruits and nuts and stuff. And all of a sudden, started doing more reading. And I found out that apples have like the longest span that you can grow food. You know, it's from like June till December. You could like pull it off the tree. And there's like tons of different varieties within there. And so there's a lot of different options to potentially work for these months. And then I found out that it's like, oh, there's apples for like every imaginable food usage. And so it has this like the widest of all food, the number of uses. You want to call it like the peanut, so to say. Certainly doesn't have protein, so you're not going to survive just on apples alone. But anyways, so then once I found this, I was like, okay, well, I live in Southeast Louisiana, definitely not known for growing apples. And I was like, well, I'm going to just start experimenting. So I got like, I don't know, I think like 200 varieties of apples over like 2 or 3 years that I was growing to go try to find the ones that are going to work for me. And it started like turning into this like proving everybody wrong. And so people started like it was never my intent to do that, because I don't really care what they think about things. I just wanted to grow food year round. And just the more I thought about it, the more I thought that was interesting. And that's where I was going to. And I started to find out from watching other people that it was like that concept was the thing that was hitting people between the eyes. That if I said, oh yeah, I want to be able to grow food year round, they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, that's something very interesting. I never really thought about that. But that is the reason that I was moving in that direction. So that is the direction. And it's funny because oftentimes people can't actually verbalize this. It's not until somebody else verbalizes, kind of surmises it, do they see it for what it is. And I eventually boiled it down to, at least for me, like the 3 things being, I want to eat year round. I want to eat fresh food year round. I want to have a complete abundance of it, as in like way beyond what most people think abundance is. And that's like a lack of, I don't want a scarce mindset. So I don't want to be like beholden to some particular tree, like, oh, you absolutely got to produce. And just that kind of mentality that people get into where they got to fight for every imaginable scrap. I love the situation where it's like, I've just got a bunch of crap, I'm just going to give it away. Whether I'm going to get strategic about it or I'm just going to be like, just take it. I like that. And then the last being, I want it done super easy. Like, I don't want to spend a ton of time doing this stuff. And I found out that those things ring true with a lot of people. And it goes to show you that right now in this era, this time, that message resonates.
Well, you just described your vision. You just
Perhaps.
laid it out and verbalized the
Yeah.
vision. And there are all kinds of visions. There are ultimate vision, bigger than us,
Yep.
and there's the visions that are at hand.
Yep.
And so
And I would call that at hand. That is not as complicated or crazy as people think it is.
no, I think that was an excellent portrayal of a vision at hand. Should the whole world get after it? It's not that ultimate a vision,
No.
but is it specified and at hand for us? Yeah. And so
Some people think that's really far away. It's really not.
no, I don't think.
That's why I would definitely say that it is not at hand is a great way to describe it.
Well, you're winning me over to that vision. I get it. I caught it. Although I grew up on an apple farm and all kinds of apples, so I understand a lot of that. And used to do nursery and everything, grafting and all that stuff. So yeah, I think that's and so when you did that, and someone heard you and listened, they caught it and said, "Hey, this is something that would be worthwhile being a part of." And that's the same thing with leadership.
Yeah.
I don't care what you tell me. I know.
Well, it is that. It's not something else. It is that.
Yeah.
Now the question is whether or not to turn that into manipulation, which would be about self versus others, or is that moving more into leadership, which is more about the grander scheme of that. And people would be willing to work with me to the extent that it's actually part of the grander vision and not the smaller one. That is the truth.
That is where selling it, if I use that term.
Yeah, I'm fine with that term.
Imparting that, what you just did to me, those are the things that I think are crucial to get to a result that God may call you to be a part of. Whether at hand, specifically in this era, like you said, or ultimately down the road. I got 10, 15, 20 years left, as far as I'm concerned. I don't want to go past 90. I'm not interested. But I do want to be a part of what he's called me to do.
Yeah.
I think part of it is this. Just because if someone catches the understanding, maybe just listening will look at that leader and go, that leader is going somewhere. You may look and say, that leader's going somewhere. I need to know that. And I like where he's going. And that's important because we've talked about this earlier when we were just talking. There's so many people who have no clue where they're going.
Yes.
And that's the vacuum. To me, that's the vacuum. You don't know where you're going. You don't even know who you are.
I'll say the part I struggle with right now is I'm not moving fast enough. Just to be perfectly blunt.
Right.
And there's tons of things happening, and the reality is the more that things get bigger, the more that it does take time to actually see the thing happen.
And more people.
It does take more people.
And more people. So we kind of define something here, I think, in that we need someone to paint the picture, the whole picture, and not, look through a knothole in the fence. Yeah, I see kids playing. Well, that's not the whole picture.
Yeah.
We need to see more than what you're playing. We need to see that whole picture of why they're in there.
So I'm going to turn over an additional card on this, because this is like the nature of, we're talking about leadership, and you're talking about like to catch it. Why I want to do like this podcast and why I created the company that I created is I'm very motivated about that meta bigger picture about leadership and what it can obtain. I'm very, very interested in that. And I'm fine and capable of holding, we'll say, my piece in that the grand vision of leadership itself. I'm fine with the smaller piece that I might have in that. But I'm also interested in helping that larger picture, i.e. somebody becoming inspired from seeing this and what they may go do. And it has nothing to do with apple trees or growing your own food or anything like that. Although I will always try to impart that people should do something, because you're totally disconnected with the reality if you don't grow your own food. To some extent, you're just not. Or people who do, and you're getting food from them and stuff. But what I want to say is, so what I was saying earlier in Louisiana wasn't it wasn't leadership, but it was there was starting to be the influences sprinkling off me again. But where leadership started to come into is I started realizing that I could achieve this faster if I got other people involved. And so, and they would benefit too. That this thing is actually bigger than me. For one, if they want the same things, right? The reality is the thing that actually makes this difficult is by doing it on your own. You make choices based on things like how much money do I have right now to be able to purchase. Let's just stick with like the apples, right? That you want to do that and you want to try to lock in June to December fresh food, and you want to lock it in. You look at like your bank account and you go, well, I don't have enough money to buy those trees. That is your problem solving of how you see it. And so if you're not doing something that is like a leadership thing, you're going to view it like that. A flip side could be, well, I could partner with somebody who has that, and maybe I have land or something. Maybe I have time or energy or motivation to do that. Maybe I want to say literally those words, get people excited about it, and then bring people together as a group to go make it happen. So after I started realizing this, like there's a reason why I didn't go immediately buy 100 acres here. I don't need 100 acres. I'm looking eventually to go do that for other kinds of purposes. That may never even materialize. I'm working with other people. I've already had 4 people say, hey, I've got multiple acres to go put trees on. Why in the hell do I need acreage? There's so many acres here that people are not using that they would love to intertwine and be part of a community, be part of something. And to the extent that they want the totality of the vision, they may not. They may just want, well, I just want to be part of a something. And so there's all those different pieces to the puzzle. And it wasn't that all of a sudden it's like, wow, this became like really hard this is stupid easy. Yeah. And that is the difference. And I try to bring that up, and I'm probably not as focused on convincing the people out there who want to grow their own food that you really should start thinking like a leader and not like a person who's going to do it on their own, because I've seen a lot of people who are doing it on their own and they're not getting very far because they have to take it all in and stuff. And
well, I think you just articulated get people, bring people, encourage people, talk to help people. You just articulated what selling and imparting a vision is. You did it in your hand situation there.
Yeah.
And so the same thing applies to leadership. And the vacuum is there aren't someone willing to take a step, to show up, to be with it, research, think about it. I'm sure that Moses, let's say you got 10, 20 people with you on this whole thing. You didn't go up those 10, 20 people and say, just follow me blindly, what I'm doing. Just do what I'm doing blindly. I don't want to tell you about it. I'm not telling you the vision. I just want you to blindly go with me. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's not how it works even close.
It doesn't even, not even close.
Not even close.
So we have to impart. We have to teach, and they got to catch it. And when they do, you got 20, 30, suddenly you got 100 people and you didn't even know how. Because catching the vision made something. So that puts you in leadership.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately. And there's a real vision there, which I get a hold of. I see it. I understand it. It's not my calling to get into it right now at this age. However, I'm glad you shared that, because we've got to deal with this vacuum. And my prayer is someone gets up with some vision and people catch it.
Yeah. I mean, well said. It's so much fun seeing it too.
It's a lot of fun.
Just the nature where you have this thing, you go and bring it up, and things start happening.
That's why I think God has called every man to be a leader, not necessarily be the leader.
Yeah.
But we have leadership calling.
At all levels.
All of us. And the vacuum is the big vision. It's not always the little one, the little agendas or the little visions. It's the vacuum. The leadership vacuum is because if there's a purpose and it's going to have a result, it's got to be big.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many times I've had people say to me, your vision's too small. That used to make me so mad when I was pastoring. I go, what do you mean our vision is so small? We want to be a church. We want to be. And then I started really looking at that. And going,
What's an example of one of these small visions?
well, we were just talking about being a pastor in a church. At this time, I remember just pastoring in that little town and had my little country church on the edge of town. And I was the pastor. And isn't it wonderful? It's a beautiful little town, and they recognize you. And I had no vision. I mean, I had that little vision, but it was so small that it wasn't even unattainable as much as it was attainable. But it was, we were attaining to it. But whoopee. And then when someone says, you got too small a vision, that hurt me. I'm like, what? What do you mean? And suddenly I realized, and someone would say, well, who cares about your little dinky thing you're doing in this little dinky town? And suddenly it wasn't just the immensity of the vision. It was a lot more far reaching than just your little area. And suddenly things began to wake up for me.
So I feel like right there, you actually just stated a way to fill a little bit more of the vacuum. And it was whoever this person is, more or less flicking you and challenging you and saying, that's a small vision. I.e. that nudge, as irritating as it might be, and maybe it was flippant and it could have been rude or whatever.
It could have been, yeah.
None of that matters, because the truth is all of a sudden that started to force you to grow.
Right.
If anything, for status reasons or something, like to prove the person wrong or whatever. I don't know what the reason is, but you get my point here.
Yeah.
That clearly sometimes poking somebody might actually help close the vision just a little bit.
There's no question.
It's back to that confrontation thing we brought up either the last time or the time before.
That we talked about, yeah. It's needed, and you may want to poke your leader. You may want to poke a friend.
Oh,
poke somebody. And I'm not talking about poke to poke's sake.
Yeah.
But it's really urging and encouraging them to.
I would say really, I feel like if I were to really think about this, the reason why what's actually happening is the universe is constantly telling you to rise up to handle and do these things, and so the poking can be misinterpreted. You can take it in that like kind of defensive standpoint,
yeah.
Or you could try to rise up to it, and some people really, we probably all of us, I'm sure, have resisted it. These things, and I'm thinking of somebody we both know who they got poked a lot, and I don't think they were ready for it. I really don't.
No, but in time they may be.
For sure. And the reality being is, probably in all of these positions, and probably the further up you go, or whatever you want to call it up, the more you're going to get poked and the more you're going to get challenged.
I might say this, and I might be wrong, but very well might be wrong, but I'm completely shocked that you were willing to do this. I think this is the best podcast we've done so far. They're getting better every time because we're delving into areas that catch people's interest, mine included, I think. And I think that we have to catch. We've got to catch the vision. We've got to catch what it is we're talking about. For those out there, I think that are listening, they're going, "Wait a minute! These two guys are talking about something that," and I'm tickled to be talking to you about this. I mean, we're different ages, quite a bit.
Yeah.
But to talk about this and to get down dirty on some of this stuff, I think is crucial. And that's part of the reason why I'm here.
Yeah. I think it is true.
Yeah.
For me, I wrote this book, and one of the things I keep trying to say to people, like I keep trying to point them to like obvious things that they've totally overlooked. Why do you think that just happened?
Yeah.
And people just totally go by, and the reality is like, well, there's some people are doing something different, right in plain sight.
Yep.
And to me, I get really passionate about it, and seeing why does somebody at some point take something a certain kind of way, and then at another point they take it another kind of way, And it's not normally the reasons that people are giving. It's normally these other sorts of things, like this kind of barometer of leadership. Like, okay, are they leading now? Or are they like moving into manipulation now? Are they, where is their vision? Okay, their vision, it was started off maybe big, and then now it's growing and it's turning more internal, and that happens.
I'm going to say something else too. If someone's listening, I said, you mentioned give us your comments, and I said give us your suggestions. But I'm going to say something you're not going to like, that I don't think anybody's going to like, and I'm going to say, you know what? I don't want your suggestions. I don't want your opinions. I want your poking.
Oh.
If something caught you, and this sparked something, that's what we want to hear.
Yeah.
Because now, I mean, to be honest with you, it gives us a little purpose. It gives us a little purpose. We poked you, and we got you going on a road, and that to me is everything.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Because otherwise, don't be offended by that. But I'm not a guy given to people's opinions. I've had so many people against me all my life, and I've always been misunderstood in a lot of ways. But that is just one of those things. It's like water off a duck's back. I just don't care about your opinion. No offense, but if you're poking me, if you're poking us, that will help cause the vision to take place. That we got a vacuum here, and we've got to get a hold of this thing, and we're telling you, sharing that with you, so you can catch that. You can't teach it, that I know of. I don't know. You can't really teach it. You got to catch it. And when you catch it, tell us. And it's exciting. And that way it's exciting. To me, I mean, I've heard some things that rocked my world and caused me to go a certain way, and I'm glad for that. And if it never happened, I don't know what I would have done. I don't know what I would have done.
So you're saying you really think the message here is catch the vision.
Catch the vision. Turn aside and see why that thing is burning.
Yeah.
Moses said, I will turn aside and see why this great sight, why it's happening. Turn aside, see the burning bush. A couple of guys with the bush. I don't know. We're trying to share with you and impart to you what we see as a need.
Yeah.
Of the hour, of the day, of the era, of the ages.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if there was any time for leadership, it is now.
No question.
Well, why don't we wrap it up? We're sitting at pretty much about an hour.
Wow, it goes fast, doesn't it?
It goes by pretty fast. So yeah, you heard John. If we've poked you, definitely message. We'd like to hear about it. Certainly, if there's any comments, put it down below. Now this is like on YouTube, so there's like an actual down below, and you can put all those crazy comments, and then maybe bots will come in there and try to sell people on Bitcoin scams and all sorts of stuff. That'd be a great time.
Great time. I thank you again, Michael.
Yeah, thank you.
Great time.
All right, this is Mike and John. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.